Dog Works Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dog Works. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com. From First Paw Media, sponsored by First Paw Coffee Company, this is the Dog Driver Show. Visit our website at dogworksradio.com. Now here are your hosts, Robert Forto and Kourosh Partow.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Robert and I'm here with my co-host KP and we are the Dog Driver Show, and today we have a dog driver calling in from Canada. KP, who do we have?
We have the pleasure of having Don Cousins with us, open class driver for many years. He's been racing Open North American Championship, Rendezvous for years. Super nice driver. It's always a pleasure to have him around in our bigger races. I've been watching him. He's a wonderful dog team, consistent dog team. In the community, we call him Cousin Don. And I believe he is one of the mushers with the maximum amount of participation at ONAC, actually. Don, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you kindly. I'm pleased to be here. Well, I first started racing dogs or got involved with dogs in 1978. And in 1982, I made my first trip to Alaska with Jim Harvey. He was kind of my mentor to get me going for the longest time, and I was fortunate enough to get to know Jim in his peak years. When I got to know him, he was one of the top teams and top kennels and quite an innovative thinker in dog mushing. So he got me off to the right start, and it's just been giver and go ever since then.
So you've been in the dog racing community and sport for years. Overall the years, Don, what did you notice? What is the evolution of our sport that you've noticed?
Well, it's evolved in quite a few different ways. The dogs, when I first started, were pretty husky dogs. They were good dogs, but they were pretty husky. Nowadays, and they were good, but so like I used to remember with the husky dogs back then, by the middle of January, sometimes you had a hard time training out of your own yard. They got so they go, well, hey, why don't we go somewhere else and get a little different exposure? And you had to work out innovative ways to get them out of the yard. This year, with the type of dogs we have, there's more different things bred into them. And, I trained here all winter out of the same yard, and I never had any trouble. So I think the evolution of the dogs is that they're really changed in a way that they are more excited to go, and they have better natural abilities and desires to go. So sled dogs have changed quite a bit in appearance and what makes them go. Equipment has been a big change too. You go and take a look at the starting area of races now, and you look at all the sleds and you don't see a piece of wood in them. Where back in the day, it was really cool if you had a wooden sled, a Moody sled, or heaven help you if it had a George Atlas style Alaskan wooden sled. Those are really sought after. But that's changed quite a bit. Feeding has got a lot better. That's a big change. And even gang lines, you had to be pretty careful back then. A lot of people used like nylon rope or poly rope and hollow poly rope. And you had to be pretty careful with that because the dogs could bite that no problem. Now we got this new iron rope. So basically everything's changing. It's just getting better, and people are figuring out ways of doing things better. And you can learn from anybody. A new person into the sport brings a different perspective, a different idea. So I think the sport's going to continue to change for quite a while yet. It's really interesting to see.
That is very interesting, Don, what you say. For you as a person who's been racing sled dogs for decades, what gets you this motivation to get up in the morning and go in the kennel, clean the kennel, take care of the dog yard, take the dogs, hook up to the ATV and train them and getting them ready for the big races?
I've always been an animal person. I never had sled dogs until 1978, but I always had a dog. And when I was a kid, a Canadian kid, you play hockey and you play outside. So when I wasn't playing hockey, I was playing outside, and I'd take my dog and we'd go off with snowshoes, and my parents would get worried, wondering where the heck I was, and I'd get lost. So I was always doing something outside. And then when I came up here and I started working as a forest ranger, Well, you can't do much in the way of summer sports when you spend a good part of your time fighting forest fires because you're just never home. And the property I live on right now, there was some people with 13 sled dogs, and just my work caused me to stop here and see them one day, and wow, that was pretty interesting, And that winter we came and visited them more and more, and they had 13 dogs, and we would go and take them for sled dog trips, 16 miles one day, just one way, just to go have a picnic and turn around and come back. And I've always really liked dogs and animals, and I just kind of fell in love like I guess everybody does, and it was so interesting to see these dogs wanting to do something and loving to do it. And it was just a fun thing, and it seemed like a really good thing for a forest ranger to be doing, running sled dogs. In this area, the mail used to be delivered by sled dogs, and there were still some of those old-timers around, and when they found out I was running dogs, they thought it was pretty cool that somebody was still doing for fun what they used to do for work. But I just really enjoy going out and spending time with the dogs. They're excited to see you. As soon as that door opens or the truck drives in the yard, they just perk right up because, they're coming to see you, and they're always happy to see you. They just make you feel good. They're just real good companions,
Definitely. Don, tell us how many dogs you have in the kennel and what your dog. I know you do a lot of your own breedings, but what is the background bloodline behind them?
Well, right now I have 40 dogs of my own. 36 of them are potential runners. I say potential because they're of the age group that they could. Each year they got to make the team. I have a few retirees and that sort of thing. Last year I lost a group of 12-year-olds, like 4 12-year-olds that were my mainstay for a while. I used to always breed like quite a husky type of dog. And about 5 years ago, I just felt seemed like I was going backwards. Everybody else was getting more into the different, a little bit, I'll say houndier type of dogs for lack of a better word, but just a different type of breeding than the old standard husky. So I purchased a pretty good stud dog, and I've used that the last few years. It come from Buddy Streeper. I had wanted to breed to one of his dogs, but always missed out, so I bought a litter mate to that dog, and his name is Willie, and he's a 1/8 German Shorthair Pointer. I was a little nervous of the German Shorthair Pointer because it can be pretty cool and nasty down here, and when I was working, I didn't have time for what I thought they needed for extra care and that sort of thing. But Willie's a very, very durable dog. Doesn't take a lot of extra care. He's got, good feet, good coat, takes good care of himself, eats and drinks well. So that's important to me. So I bred Willie to quite a few of my better females, and some of them are related to Eagle Ellis and Eddie Streeper and a few other top kennels that I've bred to or purchased dogs from in the past. So I mixed that all up, and lo and behold, I think I got a pretty good bunch of dogs. Last year I had a very young team, just yearlings and 2-year-olds, and I was really pleased how they did. Even won a race. First time in 20 years I won a race. Surprised myself and a few others, I think. But so a little disappointed not to get them out racing this year in their development, but looking forward and excited to next year. They're a good bunch of young dogs, so they got some German Shorthair Pointer mixed with old husky types from various top kennels that I had access to.
Don, I heard that your trails are your trails that you put in together. You use your private trails are some of the best around the world. Why do you have to keep this perfection for your trail system?
Well, I'm a bit of a fanatic at that. At work, I was a bit of a fanatic, and my motto is pay attention to detail, the smallest things. And if I'm going to race on the best trails in the world up in Anchorage and Fairbanks and Tok and Fort Nelson, I try to go to the very best races. I figure if I get a race on the best trails, I got to train on the best possible trails I can make so that the dogs are used to it. I think that helps a lot. And it also attracts other people to come here and train. And the nice thing about that, it allows me and my dogs to get exposed to other teams on the trails. We're not training here by ourselves, never see anybody till we go to a race. And, you know, it's kind of fun to have people stop by and come and want to train on your trails because they are good. And I figure, you know, I'm pretty sure the top sprinters like Usain Bolt and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure they train in the best possible facilities. Top Olympic athletes, they train in the best possible facilities. Well, if I want to have the best possible team, I better be training on the best possible facilities I can train in. That's the kind of way I look at it.
That is so true. That is so true. In this couple of sentences you mentioned the best trails around Anchorage and Fairbanks. Why do you have the desire, this passion for ONAC and Rendezvous?
I always like to be part of something that's historic, very well run, and I like to go against the top competition. In what I did at work, and I won't get into that too much, only to say it was very difficult, and I was one of the few that could do that, then it sort of fell over into my sport. The way I look at the sport is I want to compete against the best. I want to see how I stack up against the best, and I'm going to learn more about what I need to do, how to improve, or how I am doing by racing against the best. It's just a good thing to be part of. The Anchorage Fur Rendezvous, there's nothing like standing there on 4th Avenue and having a lot of the people that raced in the races years ago come up and shake your hand and introduce themselves to you. You never know who you're racing against. And there's a lot to go with that. I really appreciate what the old timers did to make it possible for us to have world-class events like that. It's just important to me to compete at as high a level as I can, to challenge myself, reach as far as I can within myself, and see just what I could do. My dad told me you don't need to be try to be a big fish in a big sea. You can be a big fish in a small pond. I looked at him and laughed because he was into judo and he competed at a world-class event when they didn't have weight divisions, and he was only 5 foot tall. And I said, coming from you, that's a pretty funny statement. And he kind of looked and laughed. So I think it's part of my heritage to be involved with top events, compete against the best. It just makes me feel more like a better person, and that my life is more worthwhile doing so.
Don, you are one of the drivers with the most amount of participation in 2 major races around the circuit, Rendezvous and ONAC. Tell our listeners the difference between those 2 races and how you prepare yourself and your dogs mentally for those and physically for those races.
You know, the first time I went to Anchorage, I was completely blown away. They took us around on skidoos around the trails. I just couldn't believe going under tunnels and over roads and behind buildings and hospitals and all kinds of stuff. And I couldn't believe it. For the first 4.5 miles, you were running around in town, and all of a sudden, poof, you're in the bush. And then I thought, well, in the bush, we'd be okay, but gee, come race day, there were people hanging off trees around every corner, and skiers, and just, you name it, you run into it. And it's quite a challenge. The trail, they lay it out really good. There's lots of obstacles, but they don't treat it like an obstacle course. Anywhere you could possibly have trouble, there is somebody there to help you to make sure that you can complete the race or get going. That first time I stopped at every culvert on the way out and on the way back all 3 days. It was like, holy mackerel, you know. So there's a lot to do with that, but just standing on 4th Avenue, that's pretty cool. And then when I was racing in Fairbanks, it was on 2nd Avenue, and the downtown experience and the trails there, they're pretty much all bush trails now because you start up at the clubhouse. But they're wicked fast, and in Anchorage you do 325-mile or 327-mile each, so it's very, very tough on the dogs mentally. Then in Fairbanks you do 220s and a 27.5, 28 miles. And that's very tough on the dogs mentally as well, because it's so fast, there's just no time for any little bobble at all. So I just try and prepare myself as best I can by going to as many races that have things that maybe imitate that. There used to be a good race in Canmore that had a lot of people and tunnels. So you try and pick races that, you know, you can imitate that, or I try and imitate it on my training trails. I built a tunnel. I make a lot of sled dummies. I put a sled out there with a person, looks like a person on it, and I make bag people and just try and imitate some of that. But really the biggest thing to do is to train your dogs to trust you. That whatever you're telling them to do or ask them to do, they can do it and do it well. When you go out to those races and you're hitting all those people and different things out there and you're telling them on by or straight ahead, you're going, well, if Don says it's okay to go, we better keep going because he's never let us down and had us do things that we couldn't do before. So that's kind of the mentality I go at it.
If you have to pick one of those two races, which one would you take?
Oh, boy, what a choice, Well, I've raced Fairbanks more. The main reason being is I had limited holidays to start with. I think I've raced Fairbanks 37 times. So obviously that, up to a certain point, was my favorite one. I really like it for the speed. And I've only raced Anchorage, I don't think quite 20 times yet, but I really like that one too. Which one would I choose? Holy smokes. That's really put me in a spot. I think right now I'd choose Anchorage because it still starts downtown, and I really think that just makes it a step above everything else. Just starting downtown. I realize it's not possible to do that in Fairbanks anymore, but starting downtown just makes things that much more special for me.
Let's talk about preparation for those two major events. Let's talk about nutrition. Let's start with that. How do you prepare your team with their diet for those races?
Well, I have a fairly basic feed for the most part. I'm pretty lucky I can get my dog food fairly close, reasonably priced. So like right now I feed a chicken and beef mixture. I get liver that I can add into it. I get eggs I can add into it. And I can get a lot of fat. Fat is probably the biggest thing. I asked Eddie Streeper one time what he thought the most important thing in a diet was. And one of the things he said was fat. He says it's like cocaine for people. He said the dogs it really energizes them and helps them out a lot. And you need to keep a certain amount of fat in the diet. Even when it warms up, you back off and everything else, but you don't just drop fat. I think a lot of people just drop fat when it gets hot as opposed to just backing it off. So I keep feeding fat. So I try and keep them within a certain weight all the time. I don't want to have any heavy gains or significant losses. I want to make sure that their weight is pretty close to what I want come close to race time. And spend a lot of effort just doing that, keeping their weight on them. Is that answering? Hopefully that's answering what you're asking.
Yes, definitely. Coming from Crooked Creek all the way to Alaska and basically having the dogs in the truck for a month or more than a month, how do you organize that? I've done it, usually a week or two, but longer than that, it is a full program. How do you organize this travel and loading, unloading, dropping dogs back and forth?
Well, you do have to put a lot of thought into it, I think one thing a person needs to watch is you don't want to overcrowd the dogs, and you don't want to take more dogs than you can handle. If I'm traveling by myself, 28 is about the top number of dogs I can handle by myself. If I have a helper, I'll take up to 36. But I really look at the dogs. I don't take anybody that's not going to race if they've had a previous injury or stuff like that, because it's hard for them to be on the truck. So take the right number of dogs that you can handle and come up with a schedule. I'm very rigid on my drop schedule. And in doing so, I don't have too much problem with dogs. We call it wetting their boxes, where they need to pee and you don't let them out soon enough. So take good care of that. Also, a very important thing is to have good bedding inside the box all the time. Enough when you're driving up down the highway, that can get a little hard in there. So you got to have a really good layer. So my boxes are probably got more straw and hay in them than most, but I think that's important that they're laying on something soft so they don't get banged around or bruised. I look at some people's and I don't think they put enough in there, So that's important. I have lots of little boxes and hiding places. I got a big box up the middle. I can put a ton of feed, and I pack it in there in such a way that it comes out as I need it, fairly evenly. So I don't have all one product way up front and another product near the back and crawling over myself to get out. So I put a lot of thought into that. We got lots of little storage spots. It's all designed for convenience and quick access, whether it's sleighs or equipment or even tools or spare parts if you need to repair something, that you can get at it really quickly during the race. And then you have to have enough extra room that if you have dogs that come into season, and of course you always have that during race season, right, that you can put them in various boxes so that it's not going to be a challenge when you're dealing with the boys and the girls trying to go on a date type of thing. So you have to put a lot of thought into it. It takes experience. And when you're driving, you got to be sure to give them rest at night. It's probably not best to drive through the night all the time, although I've done that. You're better off to stop and ensure that they get a good 6 to 8 hours sleep during the night when they're not driving, plus yourself, because it's hard on yourself too. And you have to pace yourself, That's important. You don't want to wear yourself out. I usually lose 10 pounds when I'm on the road in the wintertime.
Don, you started off the show by talking about the evolution of the sport. You've been involved for many years. 39 years if you started off in 1982 with your first trip to Alaska. And I don't know if you can answer this question, but I hope that you can. You said that you've been to the Fairbanks race 37 times and the Ronde 20 times, and you talked about how dogs have gotten faster. Can you recall what the time difference is between some of those early races for you and just how much faster they are now? Not necessarily, I did this one in, 57 minutes and this one in an hour and 4, but can you tell the difference in speed in the two in that period of time?
Oh, definitely. Now it seems like this winter was a bit of a different winter, but it seems like there are more teams capable of running faster than there used to be. There used to just be like a few teams, 2 or 3 teams that could run fast, but now, you get like in the Rendezvous, you get a 26-dog team field, and you're looking at, man, I hope I can finish in the top 15. There's so many teams capable of running faster because they've all got into the different types of breedings that enable you to put a faster dog team together. Geez, we used to, if you could hit a mid 90-minute run in the Rendezvous, you were doing good. Now you got to be hitting a mid 80-minute run in the Rendezvous to be doing good, and there's more than one team that can do that. So I think that's the difference. Is that there's more people with better dogs. The newer, I guess I'll call them the modern type of dogs, that are more capable of doing that,
Right. 2 more questions, Don, before we let you go. And the next one, again, is one of those evolution questions, since you've been involved with this so long. You alluded to at the start that things are going to continue to change. What do you see happening in the next 10 years with the sport? Things are going to be different climate-wise and, who knows with travel, with COVID and all of that in the next coming years. But what do you see the big change in the sport moving forward?
I think that the amount of people with good dogs is probably the biggest change that's going to continue to happen. And a really good example is you used to be able to go up to the Northwest Territories and the Yukon and race up there, basically feel pretty assured you're going to win. Well, you go up to places like that, and those people, they've invested a lot of time and effort and have really changed and the type of dogs they have. So there's more and more people that are getting more and more competitive, and I think you're going to see the fields getting more competitive all the time. The race circuit in northern Canada and western Canada, just like Alaska, is continuing to change, but it's getting busier here. I think Alaska is going through a little bit of a lull, simply because the environmental and economic climate is changing and oil isn't what it used to be. But as things develop, I hope things come back where the the cities and towns, the bigger ones are involved more. The politicians see the value of the sport to their particular communities. I just see more and more involvement from the public, but it's going to be kind of tricky because there's so many more sports competing for that same value or the same interest and same sponsorship. There's more ways to have a race these days than you can shake a stick at. People racing on all kinds of things, and just the sport of sled dog racing has just developed so much. Open class racing was the name of the game 40 years ago. Now there's many different types with the bicycle and people running with dogs, canacross and ski joring, and that sort of stuff has just taken off because so many people can do that with just a handful of dogs and don't have to have a larger number of kennel. I think the interest in that is going to really be a good fuel, and some of those people are going to carry on and go into the larger classes, the 10-dog class and the open class. So things always seem to go up and down. I think we're starting to get more on the up again, where the sport's going to come back to more bigger teams being able to compete in these bigger races. At least that's what I'm hoping to see.
And that's great, and that actually leads into my next and last question. It's the question I ask all of our guests on this show, and that is if a person's just getting involved, whether they want to do open class or one of those smaller classes, bike jor or scooter or whatever, and they came to you, Don, and asked for one piece of advice, what would you tell them?
Well, I'd tell them, come over here and work with me as much as you can from time to time, just so you can get a good feel to see what it's like, see what the commitment's like, to make sure that it's going to be a type of sport that you really want to commit to. It's easy to pick up a dog and go and race and do good for one day, but there's all the other things that go with it, and it's quite a commitment, and it's very rewarding. So when people come here and they say, oh, I want to do this or get involved, come on out here. Get involved. I'm not looking for free labor. I'm looking to encourage somebody and expose them to it. So get good exposure to the race, to the racing season and other sled dogs and people with sled dogs. Make sure it's something you want to do.
Great advice for sure. KP, anything else for Don before we go?
No, Don, thank you so much for spending last 30 minutes with us or so, and really enjoyed your company here in the show, and looking forward to have you in Alaska next year and race ONAC and Rendezvous with you, and good luck with the rest of the season, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you kindly for the opportunity, and I'm sitting here in my dog truck right now talking to you, wishing I was on the road.
Excellent. Thank you very much. On behalf of our guest today and my co-host, this is Robert for the Dog Driver Show. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
From First Paw Media, this is the Dog Driver Show. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you can see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Robert Forto and Kourosh Partow. Our producer is Robert Forto and created for First Paw Media.